Hi there, welcome to Bible/Chat. Kevin, hi.
Hello.
Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July. This is our 4th of July Bible/Chat for you on 4th of July.
Very good. Happy Independence Day. Independent to repeat 4th of July over and over again. Very annoying. We wanted to have a little dialogue about the 4th of July, what it means for us as Christians, how we should think about maybe even like our patriotism, nationalism, some of those things. So maybe let me start with you. How do you think about 4th of July? What does it do in your heart and mind?
Man, I think when I think of the 4th of July, of course there's lots of discussions. There's lots of like cross currents on this topic with different voices and things. And my interaction with politics has changed. I've lived on different sides of the country and things, and ecosystems are different. But I think when I just try to think biblically, and I realize like Acts 17, he determined the times and the boundaries of every man. I think I just become really, really grateful. And I think we should be able to have a discerning eye to American history, to American sins, to be able to read Romans 1 and see our nation cascading down, tumbling down the staircase of Romans 1 and staircase of sin in Romans 1. But I think, the Lord is so good to us to have us born at this time and in these boundaries, to realize like he could have had us born somewhere else and he would still be good in that. But just to look at our lot and to see, wow, this could so easily not have been. But it is. I think like the only real, biblical precedent for really just, celebrating this in one sense is just gratitude for the Lord's provision of putting us here. When I think about it comparatively, of course, but I mean, you hear of people who are, literally dying to cross the southern border because they just think there is hope in our land, you know, and of course we can see rot in the system. There's corruption and all sorts of things, but just to think of the place, the headspace that someone would have to be in I heard a story of a mom who was, chest deep in water trying to cross, from Mexico into America, and she had her newborn, and she took her newborn when a border search and rescue person came to rescue her and threw her newborn at this rescue agent. And he was like, "What are you doing? You threw your baby at me," and he caught it. But she just looked at him and said, "You don't know my life." And I think that those kinds of things really do have an impact when you hear them, and it just kind of, you've lived in India. There's different places. Economically, of course, there's lots of differences. I think spiritually, God is everywhere. God is with us everywhere. But in the realm of physical blessing, I think America's unprecedented in its prosperity and in its graces. And so I think I like to stay in the realm of gratitude when I think of celebrating something, but at the same time having a discerning eye and being able to call out sins, and see that. So Acts 17 is helpful to realize God is designing this, and man, I could have been born before they had medications and things, and God would still be good. But wow, I'm grateful for this, tech
antibiotics
that I have. I mean, just all this stuff. Like I can go to a dentist, and all these things are helpful. So I think as much as there is corruption, as much as the news would show us corruption and problems and things to be, potentially anxious about and all of that, I think really God is so good to us. As it says in Psalm 145, his mercies are over all his works. And so if we are looking at the negative while blind to the positive, we're going to be imbalanced. And really, I think God is very good to us. So that's at least, an initial impression.
That's good. That's good.
Impulse,
well, I didn't give any anticipatory time
that's a
here.
broad shot.
That's very helpful. Okay, so like maybe this isn't the best to get into. I mean, I agree 100% with that. I think like gratitude, just seeing the blessings that God has poured out on us. I mean, even like you were saying, like I think medication is a good illustration of that. Like the reality, hey, we're super thankful for painkillers. Do they find abuses in the society? Of course they do. But man, I am so thankful for painkillers when I got to go in for knee surgery, right? So, I mean, you haven't experienced this yet because
Right,
you're
yeah.
young, but
Yeah.
the time is coming.
coming.
But that idea is helpful, and I think that it's good to think about the whole world in that same context. Like, hey, yeah, there are things that are blessings, and we can see the blessings of the things. Do they have abuses? Of course they do. So here's kind of a spin-off question to that. How would you see, maybe, like, do you think of America as a Christian nation? Do you think it's important for us to try to like actively pursue making America a Christian nation? How would you view that?
Yeah, I think there's a big discussion and question on what defines a Christian nation. Is it everyone's regenerated? I think historically the idea was might have been in the 1800s. There was a court case where the Supreme Court, it was called Holy Trinity versus the United States or something like that, or like it was like a church versus the state in a court case, and the Supreme Court said this is a Christian nation, and it's like, well, how do they mean that? You know? So it's an interesting discussion to wade into because there's different ideas of what that would mean. I think, like, legally you would want God's law honored. Abortion, you would want that not provided for. You would want, we don't want babies to be killed.
Right.
Totally. It doesn't honor God. And I think there's no defendable morality, except God's morality. Like it's Christ or nothing,
Right.
So it's like, I think Christ is the foundation of all morality. So good, godly law will be Christian in that sense, right? So we want that. Our influence will be towards that. I think
on a broad level, like in terms of broad morality, we would say that. Yeah,
because there's no other morality. It's like I think that this is where there's discussion amongst different Christian leaders about what this looks like. Do we want a state that's explicitly Christian, or do we want a state that's kind of indirectly Christian, or it's
generally based on the moral principles that God lays out in the Scripture.
Yeah. And so it's a fascinating question. I think obviously I would prefer more God honoring, law in that way. But it's a really interesting conversation with what, how you would label, what would be the criteria to be able to label something as Christian?
Yeah.
Is it the laws? Is it the people? Is it, because that word is being used in different ways amongst different leaders.
Yeah.
So I think as far as the reality goes, I would want God's law governing. I would want our rulers submitted to God. I'd want everyone regenerated. I would want the government to bear the sword to punish evil and reward good. And I would want that. I'd want the nations of the world, like Psalm 2, to kiss the Son, lest he be angry, to repent and have that. So that reality is what I want. I think that would be God honoring, if we're salt and light. If you're a Christian dad, your family's going to look a little different. If you're a Christian business owner, your business is going to look different.
Yeah.
If you're a Christian in politics, your sphere of influence is going to look different.
Totally.
And so we're always going to have, the unregenerate until Christ comes, I think. But yeah, as far as how we label things and what we get into, I think that's a more careful discussion to get into. I think we can have an honest conversation about that. But
so
I think I guess what I'm saying is our posture would be to lean towards godly law. Yeah. All of that, like, no matter what, and not to just be like, well, I'm okay with, ungodly people. Yeah, and it's like, no, especially in the stewardship that we have as voters and things, we want to be able to lean towards that influence and
that makes sense.
Rather than just be like given all these talents and just bury it.
So for sure. Yeah. So when it comes to July 4th, I mean, tomorrow we're going to sit down and celebrate the 4th of July. We're recording this early. We're celebrating July 4th. So you would say grateful for what we've been given, aware that there's weakness in the system, and willing to look at those weaknesses, vote, exercise our civil responsibilities, pray for our leaders, and pray for the movement of our culture toward godly morality, and sort of just keep the sort of like the dialogue there while we're grateful for the blessings we've received.
Yeah, I think we can do more when it comes to what it looks like to influence. I think this is a whole different discussion, but I think the separation of church and state, that conversation has been kind of blurred, and there's confusion about how influential Christians can be. And I think in my background, I was a little more of just like what somebody had mentioned, how conservatives usually just kind of console themselves with good ideas while they watch the news as the world's falling apart. But then they're just like, no, I've won an argument, I'm fine. And I think that posture is not necessarily a faithful stewardship, though it's easy to slip into that. So I think there's more to be done, and I think the way to do that is through preaching the gospel, through helping in our local communities, and being a Christian witness here, being salt and light here, and then leaving that on the altar and seeing what the Lord does with it.
But, that's helpful. That's really good. So you're flipping burgers tomorrow. 4th of July. And you're thinking to yourself, praise God for this country. I need to share the gospel. And that would actually be the way that those two things would come together.
I think just know that the Lord can do whatever he wants. It's like Nineveh repented. Lord could do a revival. He could bring it anywhere. It's like he could totally do that, and to trust that he could. But to be grateful and just see what he puts in our hands, just worship with that. And if that's the ability to vote, worship with that. If that's the ability to flip burgers, worship with that. It's just, I think that posture is the main thing that I think about.
That's super helpful. Well, I hope that's helpful for you for your 4th of July celebrations. Just rejoicing in the blessings God's given us in our country, and then having a willingness to preach the gospel and stand up for truth in your local communities and your sphere of influence. If you have any questions on this or other topics, we'd love to talk about them. You can email us at info@faithbibleoc.org. Thanks so much.